Super excited to welcome Remco de Vries. He's head of marketing at Insided. He's going to take us through another vision for the future of customer success, where community is definitely a big part of your CS tech stack. Why? Remco, over to you.
Awesome, thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you for that introduction. You didn't butcher my last name, so well done. It's really awesome. So to start with a full disclosure, I didn't time the session, so I will try and make sure to be on time and also make sure that you ask a lot of questions. And I also want to promise that if we don't get to your question, I'm going to definitely ask to have all the questions sent over so that we can get to them later or respond to them through LinkedIn, or we'll figure something out. So today we'll talk about three things. The first being how a customer community can actually help you scale as a customer success team. The second, how to increase the impact of your customer community. And just a tiny little newsflash there already, even if you don't have the platform, you definitely, as a technology company, already have a customer community. So that's a good thing to realize. And then finally, how communities fit into the customer success tech stack. And I'm going to try and paint a little picture of what I think a tech stack should be for a customer success team. But first, before we dive into all of that, I want to talk about what customers actually want. And I do this on purpose because I feel like at events like these, but also in conversations that we have with other VPs of customer success, we often cover things like renewals or health scores or churn or NPS, advocacy, that type stuff, all the kinds of metrics that we want to see in our reports and that we preferably want to see increase. And they are super important. But I think it's also good to sometimes consider how that actually translates to what the customer really wants. And yeah, even though a lot of those things might actually translate into the aforementioned metrics, I think the customer is looking for something really different. So we decided to just ask them and do a little research. We did a survey, and these were the things that were mentioned. So for example, customers said, look, we just really want to achieve value from the product. That's all we need. Or we just want you to be there for us when we actually need help or get inspiration from peers. And I think this is a super important realization because even in the customer's words, this is a different way of looking at your job as a customer success manager and what is actually important besides all of the metrics that I mentioned previously. So if we now know what the customer is actually looking for and what they want from you, then how can you as a customer success team or CS leader play into those wants, and what can you actually do to help them out? So and we also asked that. So one thing you could do, for example, is build an awesome product, which would be beneficial for everyone, right? Or you could whip up some self-service content and inspiration for your customers to use so they can figure out how to better use your product or use it for different use cases. Or you could actually try and facilitate engagement between two customers. And I started with this because I think this is important for the community story, because we actually believe that a community is somewhere in the middle where sort of what the customer wants and what a CSM can provide sort of crosses each other, where the lines cross. It's sort of a customer platform where you align the interests between your customers and your company. Which is a bit wider than what we usually see as a definition. Let me use the rest of the presentation to actually explain why a community should really be a part of your tech stack. And before I do that, quick introduction on myself. So that's me and my two children. I tried to get my hair to look the same way today as it does on that picture, but that was proving to be a little bit too hard for me, so I'm sorry for that. And I decided to add my kids because, it just feels normal in these times, right? My kids have been on so many Zoom calls lately that it only feels logical for me to also let them be on this event, even if in Amsterdam right now it's past their bedtime and they can't really be here live. What's good to know, I bought my first community in 2012. I first learned about community at that point, although I guess we didn't really use that word back then. Back then it was still forums, which is a word we definitely try and avoid right now. And I was working at a large telco where I received a question from management how we could actually deflect more support tickets by using digital channels. Community was one of the options. And fast forward 6 years later, I bought Community back then, and I bought it again, apparently, because I'm now working at the company that is doing this as their core business and is currently helping further the Community story, which now expands to working with over 100 plus brands in B2B who are definitely using this to scale their CSM team. So that's pretty awesome. Okay, enough about me. Let's figure out how a customer community can help you scale. So while we were working with these big brands like Gainsight, etc., we actually figured out or noticed a common pattern between these brands when it comes to scaling their customer success team and what tooling they use. So try and visualize this in the simplest way possible. So you're back at your company, but it's still early days. Some people might even say that is the time that customer success was actually still fun. We like to use that. Where you only had a few customers, and especially you had a lot of time to focus on those customers and to make sure that they are on top of things and they are onboarded well. And you basically offered basic support by just answering a phone call or having an internal FAQ, and that was enough. Fun times, right? But then growth starts happening, and your company is scaling, and you are finding yourself having to spread way too thin, trying to manage the influx of customers and manage the influx of incoming questions, feedback, everything, product requests, obviously, which all customers usually have. So at that point, you decide, let's adopt a ticketing tool. So you get Zendesk or something else, and you start, or you try to start to streamline the workflow. And maybe you even launch a CRM system to get some better insights. And then fast forward a little bit further, you really start to get a lot of customers. So you're really scaling super fast, and it's really, really hard to have time for the golden rule in CS, and that is to be proactive. So instead, you find yourself dealing with a lot of customers in a very reactive manner. You have too many customer questions, you have too many product feedback requests, and you especially have too little tools to actually deal with all of these questions in a scalable way. So what if you're in this high growth scenario and you can't actually hire those extra 10 CSMs to keep up with sort of the workload? How can you get out of that sort of scalability challenge and still manage to do what your customers are expecting of you? So with Community, we actually see 3 use cases that will help you get out of that pickle I just presented. And I'll go through them really quickly here and in depth after. So one is definitely self-service, one of the most commonly heard use cases, and also I think one of the biggest struggles for customer success teams. The second one being engagement and building advocacy amongst your customers. And the last one, which is always a fun one in customer success, is the relationship with product, or how to structure feature requests and make sure that your customers are updated on whatever your product is doing to advance their efforts. Let's go through them, right? So the first one is self-service, and it's probably also the biggest one for most people. So a common thing that we hear, and probably a lot of you think this too, I know that in B2B SaaS especially, we aim to build products that are so simple to use that your customers really shouldn't have questions about it. But I'm also here to tell you that that doesn't exist. Your customers will always have questions. So you need to make sure that you're fit to deal with them. And I know that or at least I know, and probably you do too, that from different kinds of research, that it's become clear that customers have a clear preference towards self-service versus contacting your company for every little tiny question that they might have. So if you have a simple opportunity for that, you need to make sure that you offer self-service first. So for example, a help center, or in our case, a community platform. And then if the answer is not there, so if it is not there in your simple FAQs or something else, boom, you get your experts involved. And I really want to hone down on those experts because this is an interesting thing. It's really, I don't want to breathe new life into the phrase wisdom of the crowds, because I think it's old and overused. But all of your customers combined probably know a lot more about your product than you think. And many of them are actually also willing to share their expertise. So we ran a little research amongst a bunch of our customers, and there we see that on average, about 50% of the questions that are asked in the community can and will actually be answered by peers, because They are just simple questions that they have dealt with themselves before. So it's definitely good to do. And if they cannot answer those questions, then obviously there's always the option or the ability to escalate something to either your support desk or your CSM team. For example, by creating a Zendesk ticket or something else. These mechanisms show that you can deflect 25 to 50% of questions. And this is super relevant, especially for support teams, but also for CS teams, because we too often see that CS teams actually are swamped in support requests themselves. Even if they have a support team, sometimes they even don't, and they are by default sort of the support team. So especially in the early days, but also later on, it's really important that you start early setting up a self-service flow, or at least a digital-led strategy that can help you take some of that load off. Because as you scale, it will become increasingly harder and harder to do that in the right way. So you need to make sure that you are ready for whenever scale starts to happen. Moving on to engagement and advocacy. So simple. We all want to increase retention, right? And we all want to increase renewals and revenue from upsell, customer happiness if we can. But how do you actually do that? So we find that customer engagement is actually a really, really good leading indicator for this. And the benefit of that is also that it's actually something that you can increase every day. We can stare at retention numbers all day, but that doesn't change anything, right? It's a lagging metric. And so we're actually of the opinion that content or customer success content is the solution here. By actually engaging and inspiring people with relevant content, you can increase engagement, but eventually you can also increase retention and product adoption. And this is a controversial point, because I usually get funny looks when I bring up content as a solution here. And I think this is interesting, because me being a marketeer as well, we are all so used to saying that content is the best thing for marketing and will actually help increase your pipeline, blah, blah, blah. It's totally logical to us that it's the base of every marketing program out there. But then if we take that to a customer success team, then I usually get funny looks. So why is content important for a customer success team? And we're here to tell you that it's actually really, really important. So you need to create those how-tos that customers need to be able to figure out how to use your product in the best way. And you need to make sure that there are inspiring case studies or best practices from other customers that will make sure that they maybe copy them and use the product in that same way as well, but at least find out new ways to use the product and get more value from your product. And specifically in regards to community, you need to make sure that you centralize that content and make sure that there is one platform where all of the content can be found, so that they don't have to go to all kinds of different channels. And you need to push that content through that platform with relevant and personalized notifications. And then maybe even go one step further, and that's the advocacy part. Ask super users, we call them, other people might call them advocates on that community to use, and also post references, act as sort of a guide for new customers that are still onboarding. There's legion of possibilities there. And I want to show you some best practices that we have from our own customers. So first up is Nutanix. What I really like about this community is that it's a 100K big community. They have over 100K members. It's really big, and it's also super active. So they've actually refocused most of their parts of their community to create really specific community-only content, meaning it's not available on any other channel. You need to go there and go back there as a community member to actually consume that content. And every time someone goes there or does something cool or something, they'll, for example, aim to create a community blog about that to engage the community again and make sure that a customer is put on the spotlight if they've done something cool with the product. Or they discuss recent events, focus on user groups to split up their customer base and their community base to make sure that they are connected more easily with peers. And I think another really fun example from them is that they have this topic which is called "What are you working on right now?" And as this is a very technical, sometimes even developer-focused community, it's super interesting to see what customers are then posting about what they are working on right now using the software that Nutanix is providing. And that topic is actually massive. In about 3 years, I think it's gotten over like 60,000 views and many reactions and people contributing to that. So it's actually become a really valid resource for Nutanix to also use in their product development. Really cool to see. Then another one, I apologize for the Dutch on the screen because yeah, the community is in Dutch, but this is KPN. They're a telco in the Netherlands, and they've actually built an in-community escape room for their super users or advocates. The sole aim being to escape from the community, which I'm not really sure about yet, because we want them to be on the community more, obviously. But yeah, this basically takes them on a journey throughout the community, through various topics and user groups, etc., and highlights events and sort of accomplishments of the community of the previous years, and is a really cool way of making sure that your super users stay on board, stay happy, and I think this is still super fun to participate in. And then final example is Ames. So they actually use or regularly share customer success stories and success stories of customers that use Ames software to do something cool. In this case, it was a group of students that used the software of Ames to build something really awesome and actually won a prize. And I think it's super powerful if you then take these examples, even maybe interview these people and talk to them, and yeah, share to the rest of the community what they actually did, and maybe it's applicable to someone else. At the very least, it will be inspiring to others. Now, of course, I know that these are super cool examples, but you also need to measure them, and you also need to make sure that it actually contributes to something. So yeah, you need to make sure that you're notified of what goes well and what doesn't. It can't just be sharing everything and then hoping that something good comes from it, right? So you need to have a 360 overview. I tried to put that on a sheet right here, but you basically need a 360 customer overview, ranging from tickets that they posted or requested to just CSM data with their life cycle and account health, ARR contract data, and also community data has a super important role to play in there. Yeah, and I wanted to ask, so how many of you actually know, for example, what accounts or what contacts from an account have submitted the most product ideas or feature requests? And if you don't, then why don't you actually have the data? Don't you think that should be important? Or who, for example, has viewed the most content that you've created or has engaged with the most content that you've shared? I think this data is all super important, and this is also the data that a community can add to your tech stack and to your 360 customer profile. You really do want to know. Yeah, I'm skipping over this one really quickly, but this is, for example, a Salesforce report that we use for a lot of our customers that shows how many of their contacts and accounts are actually registered on the community, and then how many visits they might have, and how much time they spend on the community to show in what amount they are actually engaged. And then finally, or the final one of the three use cases is product feedback and making sure that the voice of your customers is heard. And yeah, there are actually a lot of problems here. This is always a good subject to cover on a customer success conference. So there's legion of problems with customer feedback, right? So the first thing, if you have feature requests and you ignore them, customer will be disappointed. It's a really tough thing to fix further on in the relation. Or if you have a lot of feature requests from customers, but they actually aren't centralized, or there are so many customers that want to influence product development, but your product team doesn't want to listen to you or doesn't think that those customers are important enough. This is an age-old struggle in CS. I was actually asking our VP of CS at Insighted, and basically I got the answer that in the early days of Insighted, our CSMs were actually sort of doing everything. They were helping customers with strategy, they were answering support requests, but also product features. Yeah, that was actually one of the bigger things that came in. People wanted to see so many new cool ideas, cool features to our product, and that was unmanageable at a certain point. We had CSMs that had a different Excel sheet for every customer with, like, I don't know how many customer ideas, and then had to go to the product department and figure out how to actually weed through those Excel sheets and prioritize ideas, yeah, which at some point, especially as you scale, becomes super difficult. And I think this also highlights a problem that we have in customer success there, because usually what you would hear is that people think it's the responsibility of the CSM to actually sort of do the intake of the product features or product requests. And then at some point when we have time, set up a meeting with product and go over to product and try and explain them. And I really don't think this is the best use of a CSM's time. And I also think that by doing so, a lot of it will get lost into translation, or is at least open to interpretation of a product team. And that's also a problem for product, because maybe product is therefore thinking that they are missing out on really cool ideas from customers, because it is a manual process and they don't really trust that it's done well. While product is probably actually desperate for really cool customer ideas that will help them build better products. So when we introduced our own community, we sent everyone to that platform to have one centralized overview with a lot of transparency when it comes to product and feature requests, like Pipefy does here. So I like to use customers, so I use Pipefy in this case. And what you can see here is that customers can actually post ideas, and then the nice thing is that other customers can vote on these ideas, which is a sort of pre-qualification for you and your product team, if you may. Because you very often actually will see that a customer posts an idea, is very unhappy with a certain feature or something else, and then other customers start responding to that idea because they actually do know how to already use the product to fix the problem that they're having, or maybe even already do know that the feature is there and this customer wouldn't know. So this is a nice filtering mechanism as well, also for your product team. And of course, we will still discuss every feature request in the product team meetings. And although you could also choose to sort of introduce thresholds for this, but we've chosen to not do. We actually have automatic Slack notifications for every single idea that is posted on the community. And at that point, a product owner can pick them up and decide whether or not it's such a good idea that we automatically create a Jira ticket from the community, or they want to still further investigate and get in touch with that customer and maybe build a business case or something else. And I think this is even more powerful, or will become increasingly powerful, if you then also try and tie this community data or the community ideas into your CRM data, for example. So what you see here is a standard report that we have in Salesforce that basically shows you how much ARR is backing a single customer idea. So these are all of the customers that have voted on an idea. This is what they're worth in terms of ARR or lifetime value. So you could use that as a way of prioritizing what feedback to pick up first. And I think this also really helps align the prioritization between customer success and product. And then last but not least, the biggest thing, I think, is also making sure that you close the feedback loop for your customers. So even if you don't pick up an idea, or especially if you did pick up an idea, it's super, super important to communicate to that, not only to the one who came up with the idea, but to all customers, because I think this is really the biggest way of showing that you're actually putting the voice of the customer on your roadmap. So how do you then today already start increasing the impact of your community? And like I already said, even if you don't have the platform, you already do have a customer community. So super simple. It starts with activation. Even if you don't have a platform, you can already do a lot of things to make sure that you engage with your customers and give them that sort of sense of belonging, community feel. All of your customers have one common goal. They are gaining as much value as they possibly can from your product. And I guess it's very easy to tie them together doing that, right? So you should definitely exploit that. And I know that back in the days, for example, we had offline user groups, and I would just treat a community as the online version of that. Make sure that you group your customer in a way that it makes sense, or just group them together all together, and give them that platform that they need to actually converse with each other. The second step is fixing your customer success community content. So if people want to find content, why would you offer them multiple locations where they have to go and search for that specific piece that might actually help them? That is just not optimal for customer experience. So the preferred option here is making sure that you have a combination of company curated content, meaning the FAQs that you and your team actually created, but also community generated content, which is the content that your customers generated over time and that you maybe even promoted to company curated content. Relevance is the thing that matters most. It's not really the point of who actually wrote it doesn't really matter there. It's actually cool to see that one of the SaaS companies that we work with, which is Infoland, they actually doubled the amount of help articles that they had in their knowledge base in the first half year of setting up their community, because they just used their customers to such a massive extent of providing them with the content that the other customers needed, that it was just super simple to do, which I think is a really powerful thing for your customer success team. And then the third step is making sure that it's all available within your application. And I think this is a thing that I see a lot of SaaS companies get wrong usually. Most communities are now, unfortunately, often a really siloed sort of environment. It's on the website, you have to go there, but you really don't want to interrupt people when they are working with your platform, right? You want them to be able to continue, or at least continue as soon as possible. So why not make sure that all of that content, all of those knowledge articles, but especially also the community and all of the peers that can help them out, are available in your product or in app? I think that's the biggest power of community in these days. This is also how we do it at Insighted, by the way. So we take all of that content and then provide it in a contextual way in our admin environment, which happens through a matching system, but you can also just make sure that you provide the content that you know your customers might want in an easier session. And then finally, because I know I only have 5 minutes left, so I'm rushing a little, how to fit community in your technology stack. Yeah, and I try to make this as simple as possible, but I'll try and explain the sheet because I know it's a little complicated. So what you see here, yeah, if you want to connect with customers, you can use multiple channels usually. These are, I think, the most common channels that SaaS companies use to connect to their customers. And we divided them between one-on-one channels or human touch channels and one-to-many channels, or as we call them now, digital-led channels. And in our vision, the community actually acts as the glue between all of the channels. So what you see here, for example, a community could be a decentralized platform where everything comes together, and you can, for example, make sure that you deep link your customers to your advocacy problem, because you want to make sure that they become advocates at some point, or at least know what the problem or what the program entails. Or you deep link them to your learning management system, for example. I know that someone from Glint is speaking later. Yeah, we set up an integration between their SkillJar implementation and community, which makes sure that as soon as customers search for a question, they just can immediately access educational content at the right point in time as well, which I think will make it truly powerful. And also integrated into your CRM or CS tool, for example, if you have Gainsight, I think it would make perfect sense to put all of this engagement data into a customer health score or something of the sorts. And I think, because I was trying to simplify, an even better way of doing this is the following analogy, and this is also the analogy that I would like to close with. So you might already have a customer success tool. This is quite common at SaaS companies, and that is the point where your customer success team logs in, or your employees log in, to make sure that they know the next steps for each account, or what account to focus on now, or can figure out the health score of accounts. But what your customers need, and why your customers need a community, is because they really need that environment where they log in and they can actually find all of their content needs, all of their questions needs, or other type customers, peers that they want to connect with, best practices, because they definitely also deserve that centralized platform. And then finally, yeah, if you're wondering if you're ready for a customer community, we've definitely worked out a way to help you figure that out. So stop by the Insighted booth later. I think it opens up tomorrow, or might even be open right now. And then we can definitely help you out with that. And then we have 2 minutes for questions. So Marika, yeah.
Thank you so much, Remco. We have so many questions. I definitely think that you're going to have a lot of people stopping by your booth, and a lot of people sending you invites to meet. We can probably take the top one of those questions to address in the last 2 minutes. According to you, who should lead and manage the community strategy? Is it customer success, marketing, product, or support, or someone else?
Yeah, so I think a year ago, my answer would have been customer success, definitely. And still with, I think, all of our customers, the most common department that we see right now is customer success. But actually, I think in the last year or so, we've also seen a lot of product departments come in and actually own community and own the community initiative. they will then usually be more focused on product feedback and ideation and not so much on engagement, for example, but different use cases work as well. And then also lately we see a lot more of customer marketing, for example, come in and actually own community.
Amazing. Great. One last question. We launched a community, but users were annoyed they had to log into another system to access it, despite the benefits this put them off. Any ideas?
Yeah, single sign-on, please. So make sure that your customers can log into the community and basically everything that you're trying to offer to them with just the simple credentials that they also use to use your software. I think that's the biggest hack, or it's not even a hack, like the biggest thing that you can do there to help your customers out.
Incredible. All the rest of the questions, people can pass by booth and can set up meetings with you over the next 2 days.
And I'll make sure to take a screenshot of everything that's in the questions so that I can follow up to the people that don't. That would be nice.
Incredible.
Okay.
Listen, Remco, thank you so much. It's been great to listen to your session. We look forward to welcoming you back.
Thanks for having me.